Everyone, so welcome back to Diagnosed But Not Defined. I'm Melissa, co-founder of Ricky's Compass, and today I'm here with Tracy. She is a dear friend of ours. She's been so supportive, and we love all the work that she's doing, and we just love her as a human being. So we are so excited to have her today. Hey, Tracy.
Hi there. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, we love having you. We're so excited for this interview. We've been talking about, we need to have Tracy on, and then we were talking about it for since we started the series. We were like, we need Tracy.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Anything I could do for you guys, I'm so happy to do it because you do so much for me.
Aw, it's like a community over here. The mental health.
It really is.
Yeah.
We're like a family.
Yes, I love it. And you guys should all join this community. We're super stigma-free, judgment-free over here. You need any help, we're here for you. So Tracy, for everybody that doesn't know you, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself? What do you do? What are some of your hobbies? What do you do for work? Just who is Tracy?
Oh, how much time do you have?
It's always a hard question to answer, right? Who am I? Tell me about yourself.
I know. So I have been working at the Mental Health Association of Essex and Morris for 15 years. I am currently the director of our suicide prevention services, which I'm so thrilled because, as you know, talking about suicide and bringing awareness to it really reduces that stigma surrounding it, with hopes that people will ask for help if they need it, and not be afraid to do so. So I do that. I go into the schools a lot to help educate students and faculty and staff. So on my personal life, hobbies that I have are, I have a lab. He's 3. His name is Porter. So he takes up a lot of my time. So I love walking him, getting outside, going for hikes. So I think that's a little bit about myself.
Yeah, that's great.
Oh, also too, I was diagnosed with depression when I was in high school. And also too, I am so passionate about suicide prevention because I was once suicidal myself. And also a big part of why I love what I do is the education piece. And I was actually talking to a mother whose son died by suicide, and she said if she knew the warning signs and was educated, she wholeheartedly believes that she could have prevented her son from dying by suicide.
You do so many important things and have those hard conversations that no one wants to have, and I feel like we don't have them when we're supposed to. So we always have them after the person passes, once we hear about the tragedy, but we really don't have these preventative conversations. And I think it's just because of that stigma surrounding suicide. Or when you when I share that Rick passed by suicide, people are just it's awkward for them. Even though I don't present it as something awkward, I'm just stating the facts. It's difficult to talk about, but your work with what you do is so important because education really is one of the biggest preventative factors for suicide, because we can identify, hey, my friend Tracy, she's not acting like herself today. I think there's something wrong, and I'm gonna take those steps to reach out.
Exactly.
So you were diagnosed with depression, and now you actually run this major role in preventing suicide and educating people. So when you were younger, though, when did you realize that you were having these mental health issues?
So when I was in high school many years ago, I was actually bullied by my group of girlfriends. And I have a family history of depression. And I, didn't go to school for a week. I wasn't taking care of my hygiene. I was crying all the time. The friends I did have, I wasn't talking to them. So, I'm 41 years old, and back then no one really talked about mental illness. And I remember my mom took me to therapy, which really helped me work through everything that I was going through. But I mean, I really appreciate the fact that my mom even thought to take me to therapy, because like I said, when I was younger, no one talked about mental illness, and I didn't really even know much about what therapy was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so if we think about the stigma now, imagine it like when you were in high school, that stigma, because even now, I think the governor just passed like education curriculum for mental health in schools. So it's not like your teachers were talking about it. It's not like your counselors were talking about it. Like telling your friends back then that you, did you come out to your friends that like you had depression? Like how did they
Yeah,
react?
absolutely. And they were supportive. The friends that I did have, they were very understanding, and I think support goes such a long way. When I was feeling suicidal, I remember specifically my family saying, there is light at the end of the tunnel. Things will get better. And I think just to know that there is hope, and recovery is possible is so powerful.
Yeah, and that's actually what you guys have on your business cards. Recovery is possible. Like mental illness is real, but recovery is too. And that's such an important message to just emphasize to people that, you might be feeling suicidal, which is the depths of like despair, but you will get out of it. There is a light at the end of the tunnel. There's so many resources for you. So how can you recognize like depression in others, or how can you recognize like these signs of suicide in others?
I think it's really important to notice a change in behavior. So if you see a change in behavior in your friends, in your family, that's when you want to have a conversation. And especially when we're talking about parents and youth, I really try to focus on those signs that adults may miss or dismiss as typical adolescent behavior. And not to say it's not typical adolescent behavior, but some of those examples are that lack of hygiene, sleeping too much, not sleeping at all, that feeling of sadness, hopelessness, even anger. So I think it's important that we know that. And I really think it's important that people follow their gut instinct when they notice a change. It's so important to ask that person if they're okay.
And how do you tell the difference between, hey, my friend is sad and then my friend's depressed? What's that fine line?
So I'll give you an example. So I was depressed. I was diagnosed with major depressive disorder, like I said, in high school. I actually, a few years ago, had to put my dog to sleep. And of course, it was devastating. Of course, it was sad. But I was still able to get up, shower, go to work, hang out with my friends. And I think that's one of the major differences between sadness and depression is the duration and the severity of what you're feeling. So if it lasts longer than 2 weeks, that's cause for concern.
Perfect. That's like very important information to know, the difference between just being sad, like situational type of thing, and then actually my friend's depressed, like they haven't gone out of bed, they're not eating, they're not texting like they usually do, they're not hanging out. And so you said the duration's like 2 weeks.
Yes. Okay. Yep. Exactly. And,
so,
I think it's important that, I feel like nowadays depression, the word depression is thrown around, when someone might be like, I'm depressed, when really they're just sad. Yes. So sometimes I feel like people don't take it seriously when someone says I was diagnosed with depression.
Yeah, that's so true. And we throw around these mental health terms all the time. Like when we change our minds or when we're feeling really moody, it's like, hey, I'm bipolar. Like you're so bipolar. Or if we like are very organized one day, it's like, hey, I have OCD. And it's just like, oh, well, do you really? But that's just part of like having those conversations and, educating people. But so once you were diagnosed, how do you think, did that help you having that diagnosis? Did that make you feel better, like give you some clarity?
It did. So it made me realize that like I wasn't crazy, that there was something actually wrong with me. And like I said, I feel like it's so important, even when we're talking about physical issues, to have those answers
Mhm.
is so powerful in itself.
Mhm.
But I also think it's important to mention that I'm not defined by being diagnosed with depression. I'm made up of a million different things. That's only one piece of me.
Yes, yes, and that's something that we like the title of this mini series is diagnosed but not defined. So you might be diagnosed with this, but that's not your whole life. Like that's not who Tracy is. I'm not like Tracy, my depressed friend. Like no. So it's so important to mention. So I love that. Um, so going back to, how when you were growing up in high school, like nobody really talked about mental health. And so you did go see a therapist though, right?
Yes.
So how did you feel going to the therapist for the first time? Like, were you nervous? Were you scared?
I was definitely nervous because I didn't know what to expect. I really didn't know what therapy was. So I didn't know what I should share, what I shouldn't share, like should I share too much? So it was a scary experience for me going there, not knowing what to expect. But once I got there and realized and had the compassion of the person who was my therapist, it was so easy to open up to them, and she really validated what I was feeling, which is so important.
Yeah, it's important to have like the right therapist. So we always say here, like,
Yes.
like you might need to go through a couple therapists before you find the right one, and that's okay. I saw a funny quote on Instagram. It was like finding a therapist is like dating. You have to go through like a couple of them before you find the right one. So,
Yes.
mhm. So do you think therapy helped you? And besides therapy, what are some of like your other coping mechanisms that have helped you like with your mental health?
Trying to be positive, talking to my friends, using my support system really helps when I'm feeling down and I'm stressed out, especially now with COVID.
Mhm.
I think everyone's feeling isolated and stressed out and having a higher level of anxiety. So, and it's working out, going for walks, even just being around my dog, being around people that I love and that really support me.
Mhm. Yeah, so it's like doing all those things that you love. And especially like, do you feel that during this COVID time that your depression has been affected by it?
Um, you know what? Not really. And I'll tell you why. Because ever since March of last year, I've still been going to work.
Mhm.
So I've had that normal routine.
Mhm.
And like I said, I've still been able to communicate with my friends. I actually reconnected with friends that I went to college with through Zoom.
Oh,
And
cool.
I graduated 20 years ago.
Mhm.
So I would say no, for me personally, because I still had that routine and I was getting out and being around people.
Yeah, so routine is really important. Like if you
Mm-hmm.
So for some people that maybe they've lost their jobs, or even if you just work from home, not having that routine can really affect, your mental health. Even if you're not diagnosed with anything, like we can see it with our friends, with ourselves. Like when I had to work from home, my mental state was like deteriorating. I was feeling so lazy. I didn't want to do anything. Because the work from home, like the work and home boundaries, those lines were so blurred. I was like, I'm working where I sleep and where I eat. I'm like, I can't do this.
I know. And I think people working from home have that isolation piece, um, which luckily for me, I didn't have because I was able to go to work every day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's so important. Like actually just going and seeing people that not through a screen. Um,
Right.
But I think the work you do is so awesome. So, can you talk to us about how you got into that?
Yes. So um, the Mental Health Association realized the importance of suicide prevention
Mm-hmm.
and having it under one roof, so to speak, and under one department. I actually educated over 2,000 people in the year of 2020 on suicide
Wow.
prevention.
Wow.
I know, it's crazy.
Awesome.
And I always say it takes a village.
Mm-hmm.
So the more people we could educate, the better. Parents, faith leaders. I've even given presentations for law enforcement, students,
Mm-hmm.
because like you were saying, they don't really get a lot of mental health education in schools, and I'm so glad that's changing. And I always say that youth are the most underutilized resource when it comes to suicide prevention. So if we give them the tools on what to look for in their friends and how to have a conversation and who to tell, I think it's so important.
Mm-hmm. That is so important because when we're talking about youth, especially like adolescents, they're at the age where they're not telling their parents anything that goes on in their life.
Yeah.
No, they're lying to parents and like we all did it, you know? So who are they going to? They're going to their friends. They're telling their friends how they're feeling, what their plans are, what their thoughts are. So if my friend comes up to me and they're saying some like questionable things and I know the signs, then I'm in the perfect place to say, hey, I care about you. Do you need help? How can I help you? And I
Mm-hmm.
think that education gives you the power to do that.
Absolutely. And I think too, I actually work in a lot of schools, and lately I've been bringing in this program called SOS,
Mm-hmm.
which is the signs of suicide, which teaches students how to acknowledge, care, tell. So
Mm-hmm.
acknowledge the symptoms, have a conversation, then who to tell. And we've actually, through that program, have actually helped students with depression and students that are having suicidal thoughts that have been going under the radar, that have been under the radar in schools. So without this program, guidance, the school system might not have known that these individuals were struggling. And also too, I think it's important to mention that even if, a student isn't depressed or suicidal, just that education piece and knowing that it's okay to reach out for help, that it doesn't make them crazy, and that there's nothing wrong with them to ask for help.
Yes, that's so important because, like, even I'm guilty of this. I talk about just people that have depression or that have anxiety, and it's like, hey, actually, I've had these feelings before, and I'm not like diagnosed with anything. And just knowing that I can reach out to someone, that doesn't make me flawed. That doesn't make me like any less worthy of help. Yeah, it's just I did go to therapy for a time, and it was definitely just like something situational. I never got diagnosed with anything, but something my therapist said is that sometimes you just need to go for a tune-up. Like there's
Mm-hmm.
nothing wrong with you. You just need, just like we go for our physicals every year. Sometimes the students just need to head over to the guidance counselor and just talk and just let them know how they're feeling, and that's completely fine.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I know, like, I've been going to therapy recently just to kind of get things off my chest,
Mhm.
get an unbiased opinion that isn't my friends, that isn't my family.
Yeah, that unbiased opinion is so important. 'Cause
Yes.
they're gonna tell you like, "Well, did you really think about that?"
Yes, absolutely. They're not going to agree with you like your friends might.
Yes, yes, and what I love about therapy too is that they, like, kinda make you answer your own question. You're like, "Well, how do you feel about that?" And I'm like,
Yes.
"Yeah," because you can be so influenced by what your friends say, and you're like, "Hey, I should really do that." But then your therapist is
Yep.
like, "Do you really wanna do that?"
Absolutely.
So therapy definitely isn't just for like if you think you're crazy or if you're like in the slumps of depression or anxiety or whatever. It's for everyone. It really
Yes.
is. hmm So in your work in your field, right? Have you seen stigma? And can you just like tell us a little bit about it?
So I have seen stigma. Unfortunately, even though it's 2021, people don't understand mental health and even suicide. I've heard so many people say, they had so much to live for. They have kids. Why did they do this? And they don't realize that there's this overwhelming feeling of hopelessness. I know when I was feeling suicidal, I was having a lot of health problems. I felt like I was burdening my family with all those health problems. I was depressed because they couldn't figure out what was wrong with me. And when I was feeling suicidal, I didn't say anything because I did feel like a burden. It was just one more thing that I felt like I was going to be burdening my family with.
Yeah, so definitely the way we speak has an effect on how people feel, and that contributes to stigma, and we don't even realize it. Like when we say things like they had so much to live for, they had a family, they had friends, like yes they did, but they also were struggling with something that you and I can't imagine. So it's definitely like what we try to do here, like you with MHA and us at Ricky's Compass, is to shatter that stigma. It's to speak empathetically and to understand how people are feeling and why they do the things they do, And I think a lot of it has to do with our language. Like instead of saying commit suicide, died by suicide, just put a little bit more respect to the person's situation and, understand that we'll never be able to relate to how they're feeling.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you're right. Language is so important. And it does help reduce that stigma. Even we don't even want to say successful suicide. That's also stigmatizing. And I like to tell my story when I give presentations because I feel like, it puts a face to mental illness and to suicide prevention, because I feel like some people have that, someone with a mental illness and feeling suicidal are crazy. And that's not the case. We're all human beings.
And we all have emotions and we all have like struggles that we go through. Some of us just have a chemical imbalance, and just like some of us have other diagnoses like cancer, or we broke a leg, or we just deal with migraines. It's the same exact thing, but it's just so much more taboo because we see like Tracy running like the suicide prevention field in the MHA, and we're like, there's no way she deals with depression. Like she helps people prevent that type of stuff. But you're shattering the stigma just by what you do, just by being here. So you are a champion for mental health, and I think you're an excellent role model of the work that you do. So to close this off, what is one thing you would want to tell people that are struggling with mental health?
That there is hope at the end of the tunnel, that you will be okay no matter how much you're struggling right now and how much you don't believe that. There is light, there is support, and you are not alone.
That's always so important to hear. You are not alone. Even if you feel like you are, you're not. And just, you can plug in your resources. So where can they find you? If they need some help, where can they go? Let them know.
So MHA actually created a suicide prevention website, which I'm so thankful that you're on and Alexis is on to share their story. And the website really focuses on the warning signs, how to start that conversation. Because I feel like, if someone says that they're feeling suicidal, what do you say? And what not to say. And there's resources on there. And the website is stopteenssuicide.mhaessexmorris.org. And if anyone's interested in additional information or presentations, they can reach me at 973-334-3496, extension 518.
Perfect. So we'll put all of that in our bio and in the caption so that you guys can easily access it and click on it and get educated. Remember, do your part to shatter the stigma. Tracy and I are here for you. And as you can see, we're just like two normal people, nothing to be scared of. So you guys can always just reach out to us. And thank you so much, Tracy, for being here.
Thank you for having me. And you guys do great work in educating the community, breaking down that stigma, and letting people know that there is hope.
Thank you so, so much.
Thank you.
See ya.